Good morning and welcome to CAD-1's Autodesk InfraWorks Creating an Existing Model. My name's Stan Henne here at CAD-1 and I have with me today the Venerable Warren Geisler, ACI.
Venerable, I like that.
And this will be a fun webinar today. I think InfraWorks is really one of the most exciting products that Autodesk has come out with in quite some time. It's really a powerhouse, and I think it has a great future to it. And so we're all real jazzed about this particular thing.
We're pretty psyched about the whole product and,
Yep.
and what Autodesk is doing with this whole thing. So we're going to start off obviously with our normal slides to make sure everybody can see. So as by way of introduction, Stan Henne, Business Development Manager. My name is Warren Geisler. I'm the the Geospatial Technical Specialist here and the Training Center Manager. You probably also know us by our more familiar pictures that I always love throwing up there. That's our alter egos that we like to use during the day. And if we have a hard time getting into work in the morning like we did today, or it's a Monday, or it's the end of the quarter for Stan, then he starts to go a little bit crazy.
We actually look like that.
We actually do look like that most of the time. Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping, make sure everybody can hear us and see us and all of that. You've got for the folks who are online right now, you've got your little GoToWebinar control panel out there. You'll see how you can change, if you need to, from telephone, mic, and speakers. Today's session is going to be recorded and will be posted up on our website shortly, shortly after this. Everybody is going to be put on mute, so if you do have a question, you've got a questions panel, you feel free to type in your question and we will try to answer it in a timely manner. If something's going on, you need to raise your hand, let us know that maybe we have not answered your question. Just as a test here, if everybody can hear us okay, please click the raise your hand button on your control panel and let's see how many people raise their hands, which tells us that they can hear us. And at the same time, it tells us who's not paying attention, so we can kick you out of there. That's like most of that got everybody's attention.
A lot more hands went up in.
Yep.
Anyway, good. That's good to see. Thank you. If you can hear us or aren't listening or something.
We're going to drop all your hands down for you there.
And Warren, what else? Oh, you know what, Warren? You got the blue screen of death there. It looks
like. No, I hate it when that happens.
Well, I'll have to fill in a little bit then.
Just kidding. I love throwing that out there.
What? You had me going, for one. Listen, I do want to mention, and kind of the shameless plug or the shameless commercial here a little bit, Autodesk's promotions for their fourth quarter in tomorrow. So if you've got older software that you want to upgrade, if you're needing some new seats and you want to take advantage of that $400 to $1,000 to $1,000
$2,000
no rebate
from $400 to $1,000.
Stan said $2,000. That rebate program. If you've got a lapsed subscription that's over a month old but less than a year old and you want to take advantage of the subscription fee waiver, please call us today or at very best by about noon tomorrow so we can get this taken care of for you. Otherwise, there you go. And
let's keep rolling. So what are we doing here today aside from the shameless plugs? And we've got a few more. What are we doing here today? So we're here to talk about InfraWorks. So what's the big deal with InfraWorks? Well, as many of you know, if you've been using Civil 3D for the last several years, here recently Autodesk migrated most, if not all, most of the Civil 3D users to Infrastructure Design Suite. Hopefully you were part of that migration. It was a free migration. Yeah, it was a bit of a three-ring circus, if I'm allowed to say something like that. It was a bit of a mess because
we call it the Civil 3D hokey pokey around here. But
yeah, it was a bit crazy in there. But a lot of people recently got migrated over from Civil 3D to Infrastructure Design Suite. So we've had a lot of questions. What is Infrastructure Design Suite is the first part of it. So I'm going to throw this out there because this came right off of the Autodesk website. I think it's a great piece of marketing blurbish. Yeah, comprehensive BIM, building information modeling solution for infrastructure software, provides intelligent model-based, and this is all true and correct, but most of the time when we throw that out there, the response is, what? Huh? What'd you say?
It's what we call in marketing and sales an elevator speech, Warren.
An elevator speech. That's what it is. Okay, so what is Infrastructure Design Suite? You were using Civil 3D. So it's Civil 3D and a whole lot of other things in there. So what do you have? For those of you who had Civil 3D and you are migrated over to Infrastructure Design Suite, you're going to have the Infrastructure Design Suite Premium, the one in the middle. But basically the design suites are the product, the main product, like NAP or AutoCAD or Civil 3D, and then a bunch of other products running on top of it. For the most part, like I just mentioned, those of you who had Civil 3D were migrated over to the premium one in the middle. And inside the premium one in the middle, ta-da, we've got InfraWorks. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Now you're going to notice a whole bunch of other things that are out there, you know, the utility design and Revit, structure and bridge modeler and recap and all these other things. And we have had presentations here at CAD-1 talking about all the different products. If you keep your eyes on our website, which I'm going to bring up here momentarily, and take a look at our webinars, we are going to be scheduling over the course of the next several months a webinar about each one of the little products that you might have in your suites that you have not been looking at, which, now that I say that, let's talk about what you are using. So for those of you who are here, I'm going to throw out a little poll question for everybody. So for those of you who are here, let's answer a couple of questions so we know what we're doing and who's answering the polls and what's going on. So the first question, you like that answer?
Well,
let's see how many people throw that answer out there. Okay, so for those of you who have heard of the Infrastructure Design Suite or may have been migrated or looked and migrated, are you actually using it? Do you have it? Did you get migrated? And it looks like we've got about 100% of the people have answered. Nope, sorry, I'm looking at the percentage. 85% of the people have voted. Come on, you last couple of people.
there we go.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And I'm going to share the answers with everybody. So it looks like for the most part, we've got kind of a little bit of a split, but for the most part, it sounds like the answer is no. A lot of people really aren't using the Infrastructure Design Suite.
And 3% of you are smart, Alex.
And 3% of you are smart, Alex, which is pretty cool. All right, so the next question I've got to throw out there, we're talking about InfraWorks today. Have you used InfraWorks? Have you opened it up and looked at it? Have you played with it? And I did throw out that other answer in there is, you know, because a lot of people don't even know what that is.
Well, yeah, and this is, normally we don't get all that excited about some of these products. I mean, it's not that they're not good products and they don't have their use, but lots of times they're very kind of topic focused or something like this. And this is such a broad-based, dynamic, well thought out product that it's just very important for the future of.
Yeah, it really is for everybody who's working on not only design but GIS, as you're going to see. So it looks like, again, the majority of you are not using InfraWorks, but I am glad to see that some of you are either using it or that you have had a chance to play with it. And then I have to throw this one out there because we are talking about Infrastructure Design Suite, the products inside of Infrastructure Design Suite. So for those of you who have Infrastructure Design Suite, have you actually really used any of those other products? I mean, when you load Infrastructure Design Suite, you've got Civil 3D out there, and most people, okay, this is the one that I need. They pull the Civil 3D icon over, and then what happens? Do you use the other products? If you haven't had time, if you haven't played with them, and we have actually talked to some people who said, okay, how do I get to those products? Because I deleted all the other 19 icons that were on my desktop.
So it looks like,
I'm going to go ahead and close this. It looks like the people who have Infrastructure Design Suite did answer the question, and about half and half. So for those of you who do have Infrastructure Design Suite, it looks like you have been playing around with some of those other products, but the other half have not. So I'm going to recommend one more time, and I'm going to hide that and go back to my screen. I'm going to recommend that you, over the course of the next few months, keep your eyeballs up on our website. And boy, the lag time is a little serious here today. Keep your eyeballs up on our wonderful, gorgeous website where you can see pictures of all of our wonderful sales reps. But most importantly, over here on the left-hand side, you're going to want to click on webinars and just watch our webinars and watch what's coming out. We also do send out a lot of emails. I know we do send out a lot of marketing emails, but in there you're going to get email blasts about the different webinars that are coming up. And you want to take just a little bit of time and take a look at what's in the products that you all have. And that starts with...
It's very important because Autodesk is really shifting. You know, we promise we'll get to the heart of this soon, but it's very important for our customers, for us to have our customers understand that Autodesk is shifting the way they are going. They're going to be delivering many more things on the cloud. They're going to be, you know, dropping a lot of new technologies over the. There's some great stuff coming out in our laps here soon, and you folks are paying for this with your subscriptions and with the seats you buy
purchasing
and everything else. So we want to make sure you know what you're getting. I know nobody has a lot of time to mess with all this stuff, but at the same time, there really is a lot of useful stuff that you go, oh, I could have used that yesterday.
Yep, that's exactly right. So let's talk about one of the main products inside of here. This is InfraWorks. Now, InfraWorks has two flavors. One flavor is the desktop version. The other flavor is called 360, where you're using everything on the cloud. And there are certain benefits to using 360 in the cloud services, but we're not talking about that today. We're just going to be talking about the desktop version.
And I will say that the 360 version is a separate service version that you do have to kind of rent.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we'll chat a little bit about that as we go along here.
Talk about what's in the box today.
So.
And Patty, we do see your question there, and we'll get to that.
As we pull up the product, we'll try to get to that question. Okay, so the big issue is a lot of civil engineers, a lot of designers, a lot of planners. We've been hammering down your throat, or I know I've been hammering down your throat and advocating and spearheading and trying to push the whole move to civil engineers and planners using GIS data, because GIS data is out there. There's tons of it. It's free. You can gain access to it. So why not use it inside your tools? So here's a look at one of your tools. Here's Civil 3D, or actually it's map, but it's Civil 3D, and it's bringing in GIS data. So it's great. It's working with GIS data, being able to plug that stuff in here. But that's the problem, is that if I'm doing planning or if I'm just doing design work, working with the GIS data is great for me, but it doesn't really show off a lot of stuff. It doesn't have that pizzazz that if I want to take it over to a client or a consultant or maybe a town meeting or something, a county meeting, I show them something like this and everybody's just going to be staring at it with their eyes crossed thinking it's a 70s blacklight poster or something like that. What people really want to see when we're talking about working with GIS data and getting something on your screen, you like that blacklight poster idea?
I had those all over my room when
I had those too.
So I know what they are.
I know what those are. What people really like to see is they like to see something like this, Google Earth. This is the kind of tool that people like throwing out there, showing off, hey, here's your house, here's where the development is going to go, or better yet, you know, rather than just the standard top-down approach of Google Earth, people like something like this, where, oh man, I can see the 3D view, there's my house, there's the skyline, there are the mountains. That's the kind of thing that they want to see. They don't want to see that ugly 2D stuff. They want to see, you know, something like this, 3D. Wait a minute, what is that? What is that there? That's 3D. That looks like Google Earth. Wait a minute, that's Google Earth. Then what's this? That's Autodesk InfraWorks, everybody. So that's the screenshot right out of Autodesk InfraWorks. You're not going to notice too many differences between the two, except that actually the Autodesk InfraWorks is going off of live GIS data, whereas Google Earth is just going off of their scans and their pictures and stuff like that. So that's what you can do as a quick capture of InfraWorks.
And there's something that we don't want you to miss there, because Google is going off scans and so forth. That's nice pictures, but kind of dumb graphics, whereas InfraWorks is giving you live, as Warren said, live GIS data. Now you'll notice that the buildings in InfraWorks didn't look like Denver like the Google images. But if with a little extra work, you can actually bring in the buildings that are in Denver and put those in place, and then you will have live GIS data and a very accurate skyline.
And it's very pretty. Yep. Now, before we get to that and how quick and easy it is to build that model, let's talk about what is InfraWorks. And here is the definition. Once again, as Stan mentioned before, the elevator speech of what InfraWorks is. Provides breakthrough 3D modeling and visualization technology. I love these elevator speeches. They really do sound good. But typically, when we throw that out there, people are always asking a couple of questions. Like the first one is, what did you just say? Okay, so let's try this. InfraWorks is more of a 3D GIS, data aggregation, and concept design tool for people who are using GIS data and civil engineering data. And then a lot of people stare at me with their eyes crossed and go, huh? Okay, so here it is in really, really simple form. Okay, Civil 3D, Google Earth got together and had a gorgeous baby. That's what this is all about. It's an awesome tool, just like Civil 3D, or just like Google Earth is, only instead of just looking at Google Earth, you can actually keep adding things to it. Oh, okay, now I understand. So a lot of people will look at this and go, does that mean that Civil 3D is going away? Quick and easy answer to that is no.
And
Civil
for
3D is not going away.
all you map people out there, a lot of people ask, and I'm throwing you a ringer here, Warren, but a lot of people ask, well, I see you guys doing GIS stuff in map. Well, what's this?
Exactly. So with MAP's not going away. Civil 3D is not going away. Those are our design tools. Those are our other aggregation tools. Those are the tool sets that we're going to use on a day-to-day basis. InfraWorks is a great tool, but think of it as concept design. I want to do some layout. I want to put together all of my GIS data, and I want to be able to present it in 3D in a live format that looks like I'm standing on the ground. Well, you can take this information and port it over to MAP. You can take this information and port it over to Civil 3D and even go back and forth with Civil 3D. In future webinars for InfraWorks, and we're going to have several of these coming up over the next many months, and in future webinars we'll actually show you how you can take your design information or your layout information out of InfraWorks and plug that into Civil 3D and do your full detailed design and complete your design and go to construction documents and even take that and throw it back into InfraWorks for presentation. So we'll be showing you everything that you can do. Today is just about talking about what is this product, how can you throw some things together and build a base model.
And what I do want to say, and Warren, maybe you'll show some of this down the road, but what I do want to say is a lot of people say, oh, this is a new product, and that's great, but I don't know if we can really use that. Well, this product is being used all over the world already. It's being used extensively at DIA to do a lot of planning, a lot of siting, a lot of tying together DIA's BIM and GIS programs. It was used on the tunnel expansion up by Idaho Springs to kind of develop sight lines and various concepts for the new 3-lane tunnel that they just finished up there. So and many more areas. They're also using it on the Eisenhower tunnel up at the pass to develop concepts for the future expansion of that. So those are a couple projects right now that it is being used quite extensively on.
It is a tool set that people are using, so it's not just fluff that's out there.
Yep.
So the last question that I often hear is, okay, so Civil 3D, you say it's not going away, we've still got it in the box, but what about what about the future? What about Autodesk's future? Well, I'm here to tell you folks that I cannot tell the future. Autodesk is a publicly held company. They're not telling us anything. They're not going to tell you anything. And as a quick reminder, this is me. This is not me. So I can't tell the future. And by the way, who is this? I went online and looked up for a picture of Merlin. It took me forever. All I saw were pictures of this kid. Who is this kid? Who is this little Merlin kid anyway? Am I missing something? Is there a TV show out there or something like that? Okay, so let's have a look at the product. Let's stop talking about this and actually...
And quit being silly.
And quit being silly. Whoops. We've got all these different tool sets. Let's take a look at what we've got here. And by the way, I forgot to close Skype. Always remember to close Skype and other programs like that when you're playing. Okay, so this is InfraWorks. When you first launch the program, it looks a little bit different as far as opening things up and getting inside of your tools. So what can you do? I can open up existing models. I'm going to open up one here for Denver in a moment. You can create new models. You can look at the product page. I just want to create a brand new model. Just like everything else inside of any Windows application or Autodesk application, you're going to give it a name. I'll call it model. You can give it a description. But something else that's also kind of nice, and you can do this either now or you can do this when after you've started adding things into the model, is you can define a model extent. This is one of the first things that I'm going to point out to everybody. When you're first building your model and you're throwing data into your model, and this is all about building a base model, a base plan with stuff that you download, I'm going to point this out as defining your model extent. Like I said, you don't have to do it now, but I will tell you right now that you are going to want to do that at some point after you start throwing data in. Okay, when I do click OK,
or it's going to get really, really big, really, really fast.
Well, that's exactly right. When I click OK, what's happening in the background, and the reason that this is going to take several minutes is the program is actually creating a SQL model for me to start to add information and basically throw data in. So now what Stan just said is extraordinarily appropriate.
Millions of years ago, Colorado was covered by ocean.
It was covered by oceans. There's nothing here. But what he said, it's going to get really, really big very, very quickly. So let's talk about that. How big can this model get? I am rolling my wheel out. How big can your model get, everybody? This is the model that InfraWorks builds, and why it took several seconds, when you first come in here. So you're not limited, realistically, to the size of your model. No, you can't see the stars or anything else inside here, but this is your model. This is what I'm looking at as the world turns. But as I start throwing data in here, I'm adding to this model. So as you might imagine, and I cannot stress this enough, you definitely want to work on those extents. You want to tell the program how big your model is and where everything is. Okay, so what do? You go online, you go to some cool websites, you go to the USGS website. We're actually going to be teaching a class, a one-day class for InfraWorks. Part of the class is going to teach you how to find data, how to download data, and where you're going to be downloading data. But when you do download data and information, such as City of Denver GIS, City and County of Denver GIS, I downloaded some building outlines, as well as some lakes, some aerial photographs, a lot of really cool stuff. The next thing that I'm going to be stressing is after you download the data, and it's got to be shape files or AutoCAD drawings and things like that, as I'm going to mention, you definitely want to look at the metadata. So the next thing I'm going to stress, metadata. You want to look at what you've got. The reason is that as I'm bringing these buildings in, sure, I want to bring them in. I'm kind of concerned about the coordinate system just a little bit, not that much. But I also want to know, does this data have something like roof heights that I can use? And then what are the units of measurement that they're using? Are they in feet or meters? What kind of stuff am I using for this? And that's all inside this XML file, which I just brought up on the other monitor. Here it is. This is metadata. And by the way, I'm using XML Notepad to look at this.
Scott, I see that you have your hand raised on the screen here. If you have a question, could you type that into the question box so that we can get it answered for you? Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to be looking at my metadata, and as you see, when you first look at metadata, and I've got XML Notepad, which is a really nice tool to show you metadata so you can read it. It's just a text file, everybody. If you double-click it, usually it'll launch Internet Explorer or Google Chrome or whatever your internet page is, and you've got all of this cool data. But the really nice thing about something like XML Notepad is that I can actually format this text and make it legible. So that's what that text is supposed to look like, and that's why I like XML Notepad. But I want to stress that you've got to get the metadata. It's going to be in an XML format. You want to look at the metadata, and you want to read information like what type of coordinate system am I using, what type of attributes are in here, and while I'm looking at some of these attributes, if I scroll down, here's a really important one. Oh yeah, elevation of the highest point of the building. That's the kind of stuff that you want to look for when you're downloading data. So I've downloaded the building outlines. I've got aerial photographs. I've got all kinds of cool things that I can use. I've looked at my metadata, and now I need to start adding it. When you first come into your model, you're going to want your data sources panel turned on. Now let's talk a little bit about this interface. You're going to notice that we do have a ribbon interface. So I've got home, I've got view, but I've got a lot of other really cool things, and we're going to be going into these in later webinars. Things like visual effects and how can you analyze your data and present, and even you've got some optimization tools in here. You've got a lot of really cool stuff that you can do and you can perform with all of your GIS data. So how do I get my data in here? Well, I'm going to start with my data sources, and I'm just going to start bringing data in.
Now, Warren, I think we've reached a juncture where it's important to point this out. This gray box off on the left side and the whole idea of data. This is one of the big differences between map and all the GIS aggregation you can do there and InfraWorks. Nothing wrong with map at all, but it's a matter of InfraWorks, like Revit and some other programs, is data-driven graphics rather than graphics with data attached to it. That's a very important difference.
Yep, that's exactly right. As I'm adding in the data, you'll notice that I can bring in AutoCAD DWGs, IMX, which are transfer files. That's a good file format that you'd be using from Civil 3D in here. I've got LandXML, GML, point clouds, raster data, etc. One of the things, and you're going to notice, those of you who've played with GIS data inside of Civil 3D or map, you're going to think, okay, this looks a lot like FDL. Guess what? It's using the same technology for the most part as FDL in order to connect to it. But here's a huge, huge difference that I want to point out right now. The current state of the program, these are all file-based tools that I'm bringing in. I cannot do an FDO connection to, say, an SDE server or a WMS or a WFS. So I've got to have files that I'm bringing in only. What the program is going to do is it's going to take the files and it's going to copy them and embed them into its own central database. Now I can refresh them from the original files, but the cool thing about this is that I don't necessarily need the original files anymore after I've plugged them in here. It's always good to have them on hand, but I don't need them anymore. But it is file-based only. So I can start by saying, okay, I want to bring in a raster image, or I want to bring in a surface, or something along those lines. Now, surfaces, by the way, are raster files. So as you look down here, for the surface, or for the file type, I've got virtually every type of file type for surfaces or for raster images that you can ever imagine. When you're bringing your data in, it's always a good idea to organize your data appropriately. So put it in folders, put it in subfolders. I've got my InfraWorks demo here, and here's all of my data that I've got. And as you see, I've plugged in into different things. I've plugged in different folders for being able to use them. So I've got things like the street center lines for the city. I've got aerial images, and I've got digital elevation models. Now, just to show you quickly, I'm just going to use the street center lines to start with. I would throw in all these others, and I'm going to open up a model in a moment that has these others already in them. The thing is that when you're plugging in large files, and by the way, scroll over to the right here, look at the size of some of those files. Yes, they are large. When you're plugging in large files, the program's got to configure them, and it's got to add them to its own database. That does take a little while to do this. I'll do something pretty easy and just throw in like the street center lines, and whoops, and I should have picked the shapefile for that, shouldn't I? Street center lines, and there we go, plugging it in. And absolutely nothing happened. Okay, so first thing here is that you can bring in virtually any type of file-based data that you want. It's going to copy it to its own database. Second thing I want to point out is that after I've attached to a file, I have to configure it. So I've got to really push this point. After you attach a file, you've got to configure it. But configuring it is going to tell the program, what coordinate system am I using? What type of data am I using? How do I want it to look? Where is it? All that. So I'm going to double-click this guy so that I can actually configure it and bring up the little configure dialog box, and I'm just going to fill in some blanks to configure it. So as you're bringing in your base data, always remember all of it's got to get configured. Most of this information is already going to be pre-filled in for you, like what's the name, what type of data is it. It'll figure it out. But because this is a shapefile and it's vectors, the program's going to ask me what type of data it is. Is it like streets? Is it roads? Is it railways? Is it buildings? What kind of information is it? This one's going to be roads. If I go to the geolocation, it will tell me what the coordinate system is from my original data. Now another thing, this is the third thing I'm going to be pointing out, is all of the data that you download really does need to have a coordinate system attached, unless you're going to just grab it and move it into place manually, which I'm going to do here in a moment with something. But I'm not going to do that with the streets. I'm just going to download something and maybe plug it in. But things like streets and buildings, that all needs to have a coordinate system attached to it. You've got to know where it is. If you don't have a coordinate system shown here, you've got the opportunity to pick a coordinate system out of that list or actually go to the whole list of coordinate systems. But how do I know what coordinate system to use? The metadata. So if it does not have a coordinate system assigned to it, and if it says unknown and you have to plug something in, you want to go back to the metadata and choose the coordinate system out of the metadata. Okay? The next thing that I'm going to point out that's always important when building your base data is this little option right here. And why it's in source, I don't know. It should be in geolocation, my personal opinion. When this information comes in, do I want to drape this over any type of surface that I brought in? So if I've already brought in a surface, do I want it to drape? That's always a good idea. If I've already brought in a surface, it'd be a good idea to drape it on top of the surface, because otherwise it's all going to go down to zero elevation or heaven knows where. So that's the next thing I want to always point out. Usually you're going to want to drape this on top of the surface. You've got other options in here for building tool tips and scripts, etc. But the important things that I want to point out, that you've got to configure it, you've got to tell the program what type it is, you've got to give it a geographic location. Now, okay, so that's a geographic location of the data coming in. What's the geographic location of the Earth? We're not worried about that. Okay, when we're building a model inside of InfraWorks, the program's going to use its own lat-long coordinate system, so we're not worried about what all this is. I am just going to hit close and refresh, and it's going to go ahead and refresh my data, and it's going to slap it in there exactly where it needs to go, and it's going to zoom me into it. So the first set of data that you bring in, it's always important when you bring in a set of data, the first data that you bring in, it's always important to have it located properly, and the program will zoom you right in on the planet Earth to that data. And this will take a moment or two to bring up. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see what's going on in here.
If you think about it, that's pretty cool.
Yep, that is really darn groovy. Okay, take a look at my roads, everybody. Now we can customize this, and this is going to be topic of a future webinar, is being able to customize how these things look. Like Stan said, when you see my buildings in a moment, you're going to notice that they don't have really good facades on them. We'll be talking about that in a future webinar. Or again, I want to plug our training. You can come and do the training for this.
And I will say that Brian Haley, maybe about 2 months ago, did a very nice webinar on connecting InfraWorks and Civil 3D, so that showing kind of how you can use the two seamlessly, so you can go back and check that out. We'll be doing more of that, as Warren said, in the future as well.
Yep. So now that I've got it in here and I see my data sources, I can see that I've got my street center lines inside here. If I right-click that, I can refresh them. So why would we have refresh in here? Here's the next point that I want to point out, or I want to mention about building your base model, is that frequently you'll be downloading information, and then maybe that data will change. Maybe I've got a new shapefile. Maybe I've got a new aerial photograph or a new digital elevation model or something. When you add information into an InfraWorks model, it's going to copy it into its own database. If I need to update that information and I've got a new file in the same location, same name, I'm just going to want to refresh it, and then it'll plug in the new data in here.
And Warren, Joe asked, why are the streets not draped?
Good question. Why are the streets not draped? Excellent question, Joe. The main reason is that I didn't have a surface in here to begin with. So typically, and I didn't want to bring the surface in, normally your normal workflow is to bring a surface in or an aerial photograph in, preferably a surface, and then an aerial photograph and drape that, and then just start draping everything on top of that. I didn't bring the surface or the aerial photograph in because they're really, really big, and I'd have just sat here with Stan staring at him for about a minute and a half while it configured that. And Stan hates it when I stare at him. So that's the real reason. So now that I've started to bring some of this information in here, let me go ahead and load up what I've done with Denver. And this is going to take a moment or two while I'm bringing up this model. Oh, not that long. Holy cow. Here's another really, really cool thing, and here's why I like the fact that the program copies, for the most part, all of the data into its own database.
Yes, Joe, it is.
It's all Stan's fault. That's right. Good job. Okay, so when it copies the information into its own database, what does that do? Well, it's basically a SQLite database, and accessing SQLite databases is extraordinarily quick for a good program. So I just brought in my entire model for the city of Denver. Great, Warren. That's really, really special, but what does all that mean? Well, as I zoom in, you're going to see that I've got, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer, I've actually got two very large digital elevation models where you can see the relief of the mountains, you can see everything else in here. I've got a very large aerial photograph. It's a NAIP image, and I can always goof up what NAIP stands for, National Agricultural Imaging Program, I think is what that is. So this is a NAIP image from several years ago, pretty much of the entire city and county of Denver. I've got the lakes in here. Got some information for the lakes, and as I zoom in, I've got the buildings.
And notice how the resolution updates as you zoom in. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yep, this is really, really cool stuff. So I'm going to turn on my data sources, and you can see everything that I've got in here. So I've got my terrain layers, I've got my aerial imagery, I've got my building outlines, my outlines of my buildings. Now remember, when I brought in that building outline, I click on configure, you might remember that there was an attribute inside of the building outline shapefiles that told the program how high those buildings were. So what did I do? I told the program, that's the name of the attribute. I've got to tell the program what type of units of measurement I'm in. And I tried doing a couple of screen captures when I originally did this. You've got to make sure that you set a couple of things right and you know the data that you're dealing with. Because the other part was roof height above sea level. So what did Warren do originally? Well, he did not have that roof height above sea level specified. And these buildings, the attribute was, and you might remember, elevation above the ground. So the roof heights were at 5,000 feet. And if I don't tell it that those roof heights are above ground, which I just unchecked, I'm going to go from something that looks really cool like this
to something that looks
8,
a little
7,
less cool.
6. Come on.
Now these are these are the actual building footprints in the Denver area. So that's accurate. But in 3D, you have a few things you have to tighten up if you want them to look real. You have to go out and pull some Google models or some other model warehouses to pull models that are accurate, but at least you can get the buildings at the proper height and things like that right out of the box, so to speak.
This is taking a little bit longer than I had anticipated.
Well, you try shoving a building 5,000 feet into the ground, see how long it takes you.
Okay, so while that's trying to refresh, and I'm just going to hit cancel because I don't want everybody just sitting here waiting for me. Let's see how fast that's going to cancel for me, if I can. A couple things that also I do want to point out. While you're looking at the ribbon, and you look above the ribbon where all of my quick action tools are, you may see just undo inside there. Come on, cancel.
Too far.
Darn it.
Too far along.
Yep.
Well, let's answer Jeremy's question, if we can. What is the trick if you happen to zoom way far away from your model and you can't find it easily? In other words, kind of to get back to where you were.
Good question, and I'm going to show you that. Okay, everybody. Here's what you do not want to do.
I would say you click your heels 3 times and you say there's no place like home.
Yeah, there's no place like home. No, I've got a really good answer for that, and that's one of the things I did want to point out as we go through here, along with building your model extents. So as you see here, I forgot to tell the program that the elevations for the buildings were, in fact, the height above sea level, and now I've got 5,000-foot tall buildings. which I realistically do not want.
I'm going to say that looks post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, it does.
I
That's
can't even
really
say
actually
it.
pretty scary. So, getting back to what we're doing here, and Jeremy, I'll get to that question in just a moment. Getting back to what we're doing here is that if you do have attributes that you're going to want to use for things like elevations or anything else, make sure that your units are specified appropriately, that you configure them, and make sure that it's above sea level. Now, the next thing is that for the source, I've also specified that I can drape this, but since I've got elevations, I don't necessarily need to do that. I'm going to go ahead and close and refresh that. Hopefully this isn't going to take too long. Getting back to one of the other things that I'm going to that I was going to talk about here is that you're going to notice at the top of the screen where my quick access tools are, or more importantly or not, you're able to see that I've only got something like an undo and a redo button in there. What are the things that are missing? Okay, the first thing and the most important thing that's missing, here's another key element of taking away and working with InfraWorks. There's no save button, everybody, which is why I probably shouldn't have done this to the buildings because it takes too long, so bear with me while it reloads itself. But there's no save button. Everything that you do is going into a SQLite database. Everything that you change goes into a SQLite database. And for those of you who work with GIS data or work with databases, this is going to come as no surprise to you. But for those of you who have not worked with GIS data or worked with databases, this is going to come as a huge shock to you. Databases automatically write the information. Everything that you do is automatically written to the database. So if I change the style of something, if I change the building heights, if I add in some roads, it's automatically added to the database, which is why we've got an undo button and a redo button, but there is no save. So everything that you do is happening to the database live. So always please remember that. Now, sorry to get into Jeremy's question while this is processing those data sources. How do you, if I add in information or if I've zoomed and I've panned out of here, one of the things that you're going to notice, and I'll get into this when I get back to my model, is up here where the view cube is, right next to the view cube, there's going to be a home button. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do after adding in the first couple pieces of data into your model is, hey, my buildings are back. Woo-hoo. And here they come, and they're in a regular size. That makes more sense. Okay, so one of the first things that you're going to want to do is, if you come up to your view cube and right-click, you can set a particular view as home. And what that means is that if I do get lost and I zoom out too far, I start going crazy, when I hover over my view cube at the top right of your screen, you're going to see a little home button. So if I get lost or something crazy goes and happens, click the home button and it restores you right back to where you started. So when working with InfraWorks, remember to go home. Remember to set your home and get ready to use it frequently. And I think that gets kind of into the first question that we originally had from Patty, is that she had said you can't zoom or see it when you refresh. So if you do plug in information, and maybe that's what's happening there, is you'll want to go up there and hit home, and that will reset everything to where it's supposed to be.
So hopefully, Patty, that'll answer that question of yours. Patty's question, by the way, is just so everybody knows, kind of in context here. I had a surface and site showing up, and now I can't zoom to see it when I refresh. I just started experimenting with it. Joe asks, so that was Patty's question. I think that'll take care of it. Joe asks, where do you go for the terrain raster? Is it open source?
Where did I go for all of my terrain and my raster stuff? It is open source. I do love those buildings, though. That is really cool to look at. So where did I get that terrain? You notice it looks just like Google Earth. Where did I get that terrain? Got it from the USGS website. The aerial imagery you can also get from the USGS website. Virtually, literally, everything that I've got inside this model, or in any model for the most part that I've worked on, is all open source. It's all free for download. As I mentioned before, one of the things that we are doing is we're setting up a one-day class for working with InfraWorks that's going to go into a great amount of detail of how to excuse me, how to build these models and how to work with them. But along with that detail is, how do you get this information? How do you use the USGS website? How do you find it? And then how do you edit it so that you can plug in that data? So that's just really cool stuff right here. Now the next thing is that you can also stylize the data. Part of the stylization for the buildings, and this is something new in InfraWorks is stylization for the buildings is random. As you notice, the colors, the roof pitches and heights, things like that. Well, not the heights, but the roof pitches. All of that looks pretty randomized. You can come in and you can start adding in facades, pictures, photographs that you take to make this look just like Google Earth if you've got that data. It will increase the size of your model, obviously, but it sure makes for a prettier model as you're working in here. Some of the other things you probably just want to leave on as just a default option. Now, another thing is that I brought in, and this is another free download, were the lakes, were the layout for the lakes. And something cool about the lakes are once I've defined the lakes, so as I brought the lakes in, once I defined the lakes as water areas, as one of the as my main data source or the type in here, is the program actually does treat it like water. So as I zoom in, you're going to notice that this really does look like water. The other thing that you're going to notice, if I hover over here and you watch for a moment or two, you're going to notice that the clouds are moving and the water is moving. So everything is live, and it's animated in such a way as to make this all look realistic. Now, some of those animations, as far as how fast the clouds are moving, you can change a lot of this by using the visual effects panel. And again, that's going to be something that we're going to be talking about in a future version. But just right off the bat, the visual effects panel is pretty cool because I can choose things like wind speed, cloud coverage, time of day, etc. for shadows and for shadow studies.
And so, you know, we're starting to see, hopefully with some of this, it's connecting, that you're starting to see how versatile this program is, because you may be using it to analyze data, you may be using it to do, you know, internal processes. Maybe you're laying out a new roadway and you're trying different proposals, and once you get it to where you want it, you can then take that into Civil 3D. Or if you're wanting to do a presentation for the public, perhaps, and you want, you know, reasonable quality rendering, you can do that kind of thing. And with that, Andy, you ask, is it possible to drape imagery on the buildings? Well, basically make the buildings look like...
Yeah, if you want to make the buildings look like real buildings, then yes, you can. And that comes into the style. And I just want to show you this very quickly, is that when you configure everything, and this includes water or surfaces or any kind of data that you bring in, you've got what's called rule styles, how this thing looks, how it's coming in. You're going to notice that my colors, my roof materials, etc., these are all set to, and you'll see the word random inside there, so they're all set to random. But I can also have the program take imagery and put it up on top of the buildings as well. And the program actually, for the buildings, the program actually does come with a lot of style sets that are already inside here. So if I want to, I could say, look, I want all the buildings to have maybe this look for a facade, or that look for a facade, facade. I'm sorry, I'm Civil GIS. I can't talk in architectural for too long. And then if I want to, and I'm not going to do this because, again, it's just going to take too long because there's so many buildings, but if I've chosen that and I hit close and refresh, all the buildings are going to look like that. So the short answer is definitely yes. You've got some random things that you can do, and you can even randomize the facade so that they'll look good. And
then there's again, several libraries, like there's libraries where you can pull 3D images of the actual Mile High Stadium there. There's library.
Funny you should mention that.
And you can drape SketchUp images, or you can actually bring in Revit models and rendered Revit models and place them. So there's a lot of ways you can do that, actually, Andy.
So funny you should mention that, is that if you do have certain large features, like, and I made the mistake of calling this Invesco Field, and it's just Mile High Stadium to me. I don't care who owns it anymore. It's not Invesco. It's Sports Authority.
Sports Authority.
Right? Yeah, Sports Authority.
That's one of our customers.
So I better not say anything too bad about that then. But I always call it Mile High Stadium, so, and it doesn't look like Mile High Stadium. So Stan just mentioned you can go online, you can download models from a lot of different sources, and you'll notice here that I can directly import a Revit RVT file. If I go up to Revit City, is that right? Revit City?
Yeah.
Download a Revit file. And if it's not a Revit file, I can import an IMX or a 3D model if I choose a 3D model. It can be a 3ds file, or it can be an FBX file. So there are a lot of different things that I can use. You cannot directly import a SketchUp file. However, if you've got AutoCAD 2014, one of your tools that you've got is to directly import a SketchUp file, and then I can export it as something like an FBX file. Or if you've got the Infrastructure Design Suite, you've got 3D Studio Max, and you can bring in a SketchUp file and export it as a 3ds file.
Now, one quick note, why you see that building or any other building. Basically, you remember when Warren brought in the buildings, basically it had a maximum building height. So what it does is it looks at the database and it says, okay, what's the highest point on Mile High Stadium there? And then it elevates the footprint from the aerial image. It elevates the footprint to that highest point. So it looks like it has one big flat roof on it, but it at least gives you kind of an accurate spatial form.
And for larger areas like the stadium, I can save it as an AutoCAD drawing if that's what I want to, or as I was just mentioning, I could bring it in as one of these 3D models. If I've got, I can also do, as I was mentioning, that IBX or that IMX file I can bring in here. If it's a 3D model, then when I configure it, as a default, typically they're not going to have a coordinate system. You do need to choose a coordinate system, even if it's some kind of random coordinate system. The reason is, and I'm going to say that this is a building, the reason is that once I assign the coordinate system to it, I've got this neat little tool where I can do what's called interactive placing. And when I do interactive placing, that allows me to take that model and realistically just slide it right wherever I want it to go. So rather than that ugly one on the right, I can plug in this one just by double-clicking it, hit close and refresh, and then it'll place my new stadium in there. And this is, again, either a SketchUp file from the Google Earth, or it's an AutoCAD drawing. You can have AutoCAD drawings in there. And if I don't need this other guy, well, heck, I could just delete him, grab this guy, and move it into place if that's what I wanted to do.
So, again, lots of ways to do that, and that's what makes this cool as a data aggregation tool. Joe asks, you have 4 data sources there. How much disk space for these 4 data sources? And there's many, 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 many more data sources to get this nice working model of Denver. Is it megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes?
Yeah, we are definitely talking about megabytes to the gigabyte range, and bear with me, I don't remember where this is. Oh, I accidentally put this under my documents. Bear with me. That's a very good question, by the way. As a default, if you're not paying attention to where you're putting your models, Autodesk will automatically put them in your documents library, and it will create a folder called Autodesk InfraWorks Models, and that's where your SQLite is going to go. So there's my Denver files, and there's my Denver SQLite, and you'll notice that I'm at 128 meg right now. And for the file information in there, and this is the copies of the files that I was mentioning as I was adding in files, it's going to copy them in here. It's also going to put things like render materials and other information in there, and it's going to build the SQLite database. So right now, my actual SQLite database is only 123 meg. However, the amount of files that I've got going into it is almost 3 gigabytes in size. So that's a very good question to ask.
Now, one of the things that this brings up, and I know that right now several of the Autodesk products are a little bit confusing because there's, everything has rendering in it. So which rendering should I use? Everything has, there's actually 4 different versions or variations of InfraWorks out there. The 2 most prominent are the ones out of the box, whether it's Revit or the Building Design Suite or the Infrastructure Design Suite, and then they're all kind of the same, but there's a few little variations in there. And then the cloud version. And one of the things about the cloud version that's cool about it is that when you do get into situations where you're really working with large models, or maybe you're doing roadway optimization, things like that, then you're logging in and using the power of the cloud to actually do the calculations. So you see the little blue bar batting back and forth for many, many, many minutes, and if it was a much bigger model, many, many, many hours, kind of like rendering. Well, the cloud version, what they call InfraWorks 360, allows you to upload bigger projects to the cloud, pay for a period of usage. I don't know exactly what that is right off the top of my head. But then you're using massive computing power to get this stuff done in a few minutes.
And the other thing that we definitely want to point out that's good for InfraWorks 360 and using that cloud is collaboration.
Yep.
I've got 3 gigabytes worth of data here, and if I wanted somebody else to see this, sending 3 gigabytes over the internet is going to take me quite some time, or just plugging this in and trying to give it to somebody else to look at. But if I were to put it on the cloud, I would be able to just share my model and say, okay, Stan, here's where the model is. Open up your InfraWorks 360, go take a look, and then Stan could start moving things around, coordinating, using his tool set. So coordination and collaboration are huge, huge deals in the cloud.
So you'll be hearing more about all of that. We have about 3, 4, or 5 minutes left.
So
Joe's got a question, but I don't want to put the kibosh on you, Mr.
Yeah, I've
Geisler.
got 1 or 2 more things that I really do want to show off quickly to help you build your base model and work off your base model. So you've seen how quick and easy it is for me to just start slapping data in there as long as it's configured. The other thing that I wanted to bring up that I mentioned early on was being able to set up your model extents. If you don't set your model extents, the program's going to try to take everything that you throw at it, and maybe I only want like a 50 block area, so I don't need everything. So in my model settings options, after I've started to build the model, I've got an option here. Rather than using the entire model for the extents, I could build a bounding box, and that really does speed up all of my processes and everything that I'm doing. Not just panning and zooming, but every time that you see that I do this refresh, and it takes a long time to refresh some of my data, it's only going to do that inside the extent. So that's the other thing that I really wanted to stress. Another thing that I wanted to stress is in my view ribbon, while you're doing this and playing with surfaces and terrain, until you get really used to what you're doing, you're going to want to set this program to lock it automatically above the terrain. That way, as I'm orbiting, it slams me down into the ground, and I can't go any farther, so it's slamming me down. If I don't lock it above the terrain, I'm liable to go upside down and inside the earth, and things are liable to get confused. So that's another thing I want to show off. And then the last thing I definitely want to show off is if you're going to be using terrain in multiple terrain-like layers, you've got a button inside of your data sources, and this allows you to organize and stack your terrain layers. Basically, it's who's on top wins. So you'll notice that I've got some move on top buttons, move above other buttons, etc. And this is also really important. Even though I've told the image to drape on top of the surface, if I grab the surface and move it above the image, I'm not going to be able to see the image. So this is the last button that I definitely want to show off. I'm afraid we're running out of time. And let's see. So one question, one of the questions was being able to do a zoom extents on a layer. Not really, to be quite honest. And I know that there was a trick that Brian Haley was showing me, and unfortunately I don't know that. But I do want to stress, use the button up at the top right that I mentioned before for the home, so that if you do get confused, if you do get out of sorts, you can just click home, you're right back to where you were originally, and then you can zoom right back in. If you do need to change this and say, look, something else needs to be my home and I've got this oriented, I can always right click and say set current view as home, so that that becomes my home tool from now on. Hopefully we've answered most of the questions, if not all of them, but really just showing you what you can do with the program and building up your base model, getting your base information and building up your base model. I know that this went quick, and we're going to show this again, or I'm going to show another slide here momentarily just to remind everybody that we are going to have a class or classes built around just around InfraWorks. This product is definitely not a toy. It's not going away. It's not something that Autodesk is just looking at and going, oh, that's cute. They're just going to throw it out there. They've put a lot of money, time, and energy into it. By what I've been led to believe, and you didn't hear this from me, their programming resources for InfraWorks more than doubles or triples what they're doing for Civil 3D or virtually anything else right now.
This has tremendous power.
Yeah, they're putting a lot of energy and effort into this, folks. So this is a great tool. Take a look at it. It doesn't do everything. It's not a great, a finished design product, but who knows what's going to happen.
But it does tie in well with the finished design product.
Yes, and that's
very
the other thing.
Directly.
Yeah, being able to take this and whatever you're doing, and in a future webinar, we're going to show you how to do some concept layout for roads or for parking or for ponds or anything else. So you're going to do a basic draw-up of a layout and be able to dump that right into Civil 3D and do your design off of it.
So watch for those, and we'll try and thank you all for the nice comments too. We really appreciate that. It was a good webinar for you, and we'll try and keep you posted as to when future webinars that will expand your knowledge of this are. And there's all of our. You can Facebook us, then Twitter us, and then do that other thing with us. And
I threw up the flashing sign there just so you could see it again. Don't forget, we do have training. We've got online. We are now setting up new systems for online training for people in remote areas. So please keep your ear to the ground and keep in contact with us for that as well. But we are going to be building up some upcoming InfraWorks classes. The first one is model generation, base model generation. So everything you saw here, we'll be spending all day on. I'll be showing you where I got that data, how I got that data, how to use those other websites and get the data that you need, and then how to use that data and organize it properly inside of an InfraWorks model.
So with that, we'll close and see you on the next webinar. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.